Yeah, it was, and that was in high school. So it was the story. The story is wild, and I mean, it was in the media. It was a pretty big media story, but it was a party that I didn't go to. I chose not to go to because we were starting my junior year of high school, and my schedule was all fucked up. And I was on my principal was a soccer fan. I was the captain of the soccer team, and it was a schedule that I didn't want. And I knew that she would give me whatever I wanted because she loved the soccer team, and her husband was the principal of my rival school soccer team, which was wild. So like, whatever story, but so I stayed back that day knowing that the next morning I'm gonna have to go to school. I'm gonna have to talk to her. I'm gonna have to get my shit straightened out. So from Palmdale, all of my best friends, they came to a party down in Long Beach, and it was a beach day. They did for my friend Mike's girlfriend's birthday. And it was just like, bro, just one of those trips. You, all the homies, like all of her friends. It was her birthday. They ended up going to a hotel. They had 2 hotel rooms that they were all partying in, just partying around the hotel. And that day, my boy Wally, never been religious ever in his life. And he, just from word of that was going through the crowd and from everything that came out in like the police like reports, this and that. So Wally that day had said, I don't know what it was, but I was sitting on the beach today staring at the horizon and I found God and I saw God and I don't know why. I don't know what it was, but he was like, it was God. And I've never been a believer, whatever, you know? And that night he's standing on a balcony talking to a girl, and he had told her that story and had said, I had found God today. And she said, no, you didn't, because God isn't real. He was like, well, regardless of what you believe, I saw what I saw, so I know what I saw, you know, and that was it. I've like had an epiphany today. It was something beautiful. And she was like, no, you didn't. And so they had gotten into an argument about it. And he's like the most laid back dude you could ever think of. 17 years old at the time. Most laid back, chilling, bro. And she legitimately left the balcony, went and grabbed a little switchblade knife, came back, and she had said that if you mention God one more time, I'm going to stab you. And this was in her actual police report, in her confession. So she had said, if you mention God one more time, I'm going to stab you. And he was like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? She ended up stabbing him in the neck, hit a main artery. He walked back into the room where everybody was partying, bro, blood crazy everywhere. And like how traumatic that would be for high school students, right? This is one of your best friends, bro, that this is happening to. And he died right there before the ambulance came because he bled out. And so they ended up arresting the chick. She ended up getting life in prison. But the fact that how the irony in it, right, is that religiously, you know, like people try to find God, or they look to God to get themselves out of a situation, or when they're struggling, or when whatever it is, you know, they look to belief and they look to a higher power to get them somewhere. And I don't necessarily think it was something he was seeking for at the time. I think it was just something that happened to him. And when you look at now the story of what it was, and in me, I grew up very religious with my grandma, but I've developed my own beliefs in a lot of different things now, you know, but from the story of Christianity and what it is, right? And him finding God that day and having been killed that night is wild to me, bro. And I'm like, it like blows my mind how ironic that is.
I mean, it's insane. And the first thing I think of it, I feel like there's 2 different ways to look at it. I feel like I guess I don't. It sounds very LA me to say, but I feel like I'm more spiritual than religious. I fucking hate that I just said that. So my East Coast friends are gonna torture me if I just heard that.
You want some broccoli or something? Can I give you some kale to snack on?
Goddamn. Sorry, I apologize. I mean, that was a horrible transition. But I feel like the way to look at, like, looking at that, I got in trouble yesterday for saying that I take the devil's advocate, and no pun intended again, when I have conversations, I just like to look at the other side.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that, it's like, okay, it's rhetorical, I guess, but however you want to add to it. He found God that day, and then, in a sense, got killed for finding God. Not precisely, but that's the irony of it. And then you could look at it as how would that God let that happen type shit? You know what I mean? Does God work in mysterious ways? Or is it because he found God that day because he was destined to die regardless?
Exactly. Because it was found that day. Was he destined to die? And he ended up finding it before he was killed.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like, I mean, these are the questions that are left unknown, you know?
Yeah, and maybe it's not even worth entertaining that question, but I mean, from the glass half full side of me is like, yeah, I mean, we'll never know, but I feel like there's got to be some peace to that at the same time. You know what I mean? From
Yeah.
all sides of it.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, looking at it too, that is the way that I would look at it as well. Is that was his story and it was written. He ended up finding God, not just in time, but exactly when he was supposed to.
Mm.
You know, and that's it's crazy, bro. It was a crazy story, and the most interesting part about that is like me and all of my best friends, it like broke up the group instead of bringing us together.
How
You know what
so?
I mean? In a way that I think everybody felt like, not necessarily that they were at fault for a lot of things, but you know, people feeling like I should have been standing next to him, or I should have been there, and I should have been doing this. This should have never happened because of this, you know? And I think people were holding themselves accountable of things that nobody knew was going to happen, and things that they would have never stopped anyway because it was going to happen the way it was going to happen, you know? So, yeah, in an interesting way, bro, we all just like split up and stopped talking. And to me, it's like, in hindsight, looking back at it, it's crazy because that's something that should technically bring everybody together, but everybody deals with it, deals with death in different ways.
Yeah, much different. And that is, you'd think it would bring you together. And I would say the same thing. Me and my family, we became even stronger together. But it's so many examples of driving each other apart, like you said. Because I think people do handle shit, especially grieving, so differently that the emotions take you out of whack. I mean, is that something you felt too, considering you would have been at that party if your schedule wasn't all messed up?
No, I never felt like I was at that there was any accountability or anything for it, for me not going. But it was one of those things that things could have been different. Like a minute change, bro. You're talking about a minute, seconds of change. You know what I'm saying? If anything, you look at like people that get in a car accident, right? If seconds of something was different that day, that wouldn't have happened.
Seconds.
Seconds.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? We're talking about seconds, milliseconds, maybe. But like if the slightest second was different in something in that day that caused somebody to stop or caused somebody to do something or whatever it was, it would have been a completely different story. And also the second most ironic thing about that was that girl was there for Mike's girlfriend's party. So they were both there to celebrate the life of the same person, and his life had gotten taken that night.
See, it's kind of, I mean, I was back to the thought of, was it a peaceful transition because you found God, or could it take you the other way of not believing in God because of that? It's like, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? Like that she was there and it happened like that. It makes it even more fucked up and frustrating.
Absolutely. And it's, one, it was senseless, it was stupid. Two, even from, you know, the perspective of the girlfriend, right? This was somebody that you had invited to your party, you know, and how does that make that person feel? Do they feel some type of accountability for something like that because she had invited that person and this is what happened? You know, and like clearly nobody ever thinks anything like that is going to happen. Like death is like this, bro. You never know. Can happen anytime, anywhere, anybody, you know? And so for that situation to have happened the way that it did, looking at it from an outsider's perspective, looking in, like I wasn't there, right? And so when I see how everybody is acting afterwards, it is interesting to see the guilt that a lot of people hold because of it's an unknown question of, was it because of something that I did? You know, was it an action that I did? Is it because I invited her that this had happened? If I would have never invited her, this wouldn't have happened. If he didn't find God that day, this wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's baggage that sticks there, especially at 17, being so close. There's survivor's guilt that comes with that, guilt of, was I accountable for that? There's so many moving parts, and I wish, I'm curious to think what people there today, because some people might get over it quickly or however they got to grieve through it. And then some people, that's an experience that doesn't leave you. That never leaves you. That might fuck one of those people up for life.
Absolutely. And for me, you know, he was a very, very, I saw him every day, pick him up on my way to school, drop him off on my way home from school. It was every single day.
So how did you process it?
It was interesting, bro. There wasn't a guilt thing there, but it was different for me to process. And from the family that I come from, my grandparents were immigrants. They're from Indonesia. You know, my dad, growing up under my grandpa was very strict, you know, and they were taught, I think just a generation before us were taught not to show any emotion regardless. You know what I mean? You just get through and you do what you got to do. And so it's interesting too, of my dad as an example, watching him in loss, Granted, I've never lost anyone in my immediate family aside from my grandmother, and I had a cousin. I had a cousin that committed suicide 5 years ago, but in my immediate family of my sisters, my dad, my mom, I've never lost anybody, and I'm truly grateful for that. But watching how these people process loss too, it's interesting because I never had you don't have a role model or something to tell you how to act in these situations. You know what I mean? You kind of just have to go through it the way you want to go through it. And for me, um it was tough, bro. It was difficult, you know. And then also like me, kind of just losing all my homies and getting out of touch with all my homies. I felt more alone in that time than any other time in my life leading up until that point, and it was interesting. It was a very, very weird feeling.
So in relation to, you said it was the way you were brought up was more just kind of keep your shit together and move on kind of thing in general, or was that?
Yeah, I mean, my parents were great, bro. My parents have always been there. My mom, my dad have always showed us love. They've always showed all these different things. But watching them as role models and how they process things, right? Not necessarily the way that they treated us, but watching the way that they deal. Yeah, my dad is just kind of like, doesn't matter what it is, bro. I'm gonna get the work done. Doesn't matter how I feel. I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna get the work done. So I think even that too, in a like a mind process of, okay, I still have things that I have to do, so let me make sure I still get up and do them. You know, I think that was a positive outlet or a positive outlook in that too, because of I mean, just the staying busy aspect, you know, and keeping your mind busy with things, and just doing what I'm supposed to do and making sure I stay the track of my life, because I still have a life. You know what I'm saying? And you start, I don't know, you just start questioning, bro, and you start looking into different things. Like I had told you I had one of my buddies overdose when I was in college. And after his overdose, I had never had so many questions in my life about just what happens after life. You know what I mean? And you just look for answers as to like why. And bro, I like dug way into books and like all different kinds of shit. And I got into like hypnotherapy that brings out past lives and this and that. And like, and it completely changed my perspective on not even just what life is and what the afterlife is, but like spirituality and religions, you know, because it was a book called Many Lives, Many Masters that I got into.
I've heard of that. I haven't read it.
By Brian Weiss.
Okay.
And so he was a doctor in Florida. This way back when he did hypnotherapy because he didn't agree with suppressing feelings with pills and medication, right? Because you need to get to the core root of what the issue is in order to fix it. And he was just trying hypnotherapy and found a girl that was reluctant to do it, and she finally did it and started speaking in different voices. And he has like full counts, tapes, he has YouTube videos from like that were recorded not on YouTube way back then, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
On YouTube now, and just crazy counts of what happens in the afterlife and what happens in your past lives and who people really are and how old your spirit is and how many lives you've lived and this and that. And it opened my mind up. And I looked at death way differently after that.
How did you look at it?
Way differently. I wasn't necessarily ever scared of death, right? It was, I am more so scared of not fulfilling what I feel like I have to do in this life. I'm more so scared of not finishing what I feel like I need to finish, and reaching as many people as possible and helping as many people as I can, in taking my life's course and just helping and motivating and doing what I do, right? So before that though, it was just interesting because you don't read and you're not opened up to things. I guess you really only kind of have the one perception that you might think what things are, and it's not really anything. You just don't really have an answer to it, right? So it was different. I don't know. I'm like not scared because I feel like I'll come back.